ExamPrep.School. Wyoming Personal Lines Insurance Producer Exam. Exam code 12-WY-55 or OPWY55. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Casualty-specific statutes, regulations. Common statutes and regulations. Property and casualty policy provisions and contract law. Property and casualty terms and related concepts. Property and casualty statutes, your regulations only. Types of casualty policies. Types of property policies. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Under the ISOHO 2 broad form homeowners policy, the insured dwelling qualifies for coverage only if it contains no more than how many separate family units? A. 1 family unit. B. 2 family units. C. 4 family units. D. 6 family units. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because the HO2 policy provides coverage only for dwellings containing up to 4 separate family units. Reason A is not correct. 1 family unit is incorrect because HO2 policies allow more than a single unit, up to 4. Reason B is not correct. 2 family units is incorrect because HO2 policies permit up to 4 units, not just 2. Reason D is not correct. 6 family units is incorrect because HO2 policies limit coverage to no more than 4 units. Question 2. Under an ISOHO 3 homeowners policy, which of the following best distinguishes its coverage compared to an ISOHO 5 policy? A. The broad form HO3 policy limits dwelling coverage to named perils, while the special form HO5 policy extends open perils coverage only to personal property. B. Under an HO3 policy, personal property is covered on a named perils basis, whereas under an HO5 policy, both personal property and the dwelling are insured on an open perils basis. C. Under an HO3 policy, personal property is insured on an open perils basis and settled at actual cash value, whereas HO5 provides replacement cost settlement on all possessions. D. Under an HO3 policy, both dwelling and personal property are insured on an open perils basis, whereas the HO5 policy restricts personal property coverage to specified perils. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because HO3 covers personal property only for named perils, while HO5 extends open perils coverage to both personal property and the dwelling. Reason A is not correct. This is incorrect because HO5 provides open perils coverage to both dwelling and personal property, not only to personal property. Reason C is not correct. This misstates HO3 personal property coverage, which is named perils rather than open perils with actual cash value. Reason D is not correct. This incorrectly asserts that HO5 restricts personal property coverage to specified perils, but it actually provides open perils coverage. Question 3. Which item will be paid at its full value under Coverage C without being subject to a special sublimit? A. The $12,000 engagement ring that was stolen. B. The $6,000 mink coat that was stolen. C. The $30,000 silverware set that was stolen. D. The $20,000 original painting that was stolen. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is the original painting, because fine art is covered under the policy's general personal property limit, Coverage C, and is not subject to the listed special sublimits that apply to jewelry, furs, or silverware. Reason A is not correct. Jewelry is subject to a $1,500 special sublimit under an HO3, so the full $12,000 would not be paid. Reason B is not correct. Furs have a $1,500 special sublimit under an HO3, making full reimbursement at $6,000 inapplicable. Reason C is not correct. Silverware is limited to $2,500 under the HO3 special limits, so the $30,000 value exceeds that sublimit. Question 4. How would the accidental cracking of the smartphone screen be handled under the policy? A. It is covered under personal property on an open peril basis without requiring any additional endorsements. B. It is excluded as mechanical breakdown and would require a separate accidental damage endorsement. C. It is covered only if a glass coverage endorsement has been added to the policy. D. It is excluded as wear and tear and not covered under the policy. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the damage is covered under the open peril personal property coverage of an HO5 form, which includes accidental damage such as item breakage from drops without the need for additional endorsements. Reason B is not correct. Accidental damage from drops is covered under HO5 open perils. Mechanical breakdown exclusions refer to equipment failure, not mishandling. Reason C is not correct. Glass coverage for personal property is already included under the open perils basis of HO5, so no endorsement is needed. Reason D is not correct. Wear and tear exclusions apply to gradual deterioration. An accidental drop causing breakage is not considered wear and tear. Question 5. Which of the following perils is explicitly covered under the basic DP1 dwelling policy forms named perils? A. Smoke damage. B. Lightning strike. C. Vandalism by a tenant. D. Freezing of plumbing systems. The correct answer is B. The basic DP1 form lists only fire, lightning, and internal explosion as named perils by default. Lightning strike is one of those three perils. Reason A is not correct. Smoke damage is not covered under the basic DP1 unless a broader peril endorsement is added. Reason C is not correct. Vandalism by a tenant is not a named peril under the basic form and requires an extended coverage endorsement. Reason D is not correct. Freezing of plumbing systems is not included under the basic DP1 named perils and appears only in higher level forms. Question 6. Which of the following additional perils is covered under the broad form, DP2, that is not included under the basic form, DP1? A. Internal explosion. B. Weight of snow, ice, or sleet damage. C. Fire damage. D. Volcanic eruption. The correct answer is B. The DP2 broad form adds perils such as weight of snow, ice, or sleet, which are not covered under the basic DP1 form. Reason A is not correct. Internal explosion is already covered under the basic DP1 form. Reason C is not correct. Fire damage is one of the three named perils in the basic DP1 form. Reason D is not correct. Volcanic eruption is a peril in the basic DP1 extension list and thus not unique to DP2. Question 7. A homeowner has a special DP3 policy on a rental dwelling. Following a severe hailstorm, several exterior window panes are cracked and shattered. Under the DP3 open perils coverage, how is the loss to the windows treated? A. Covered as a direct physical loss from an open peril under the policy. B. Covered only if the insured had purchased the separate glass breakage endorsement. C. Excluded because windows are not considered part of the dwelling under DP3. D. Excluded because damage from hail is specifically listed as a non-covered peril. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is covered as a direct physical loss from an open peril because the special DP3 form provides open peril coverage for the dwelling, including window damage caused by hail without needing a separate endorsement. Reason B is not correct. A separate glass breakage endorsement is not required when the DP3 form already covers all direct physical losses unless specifically excluded. Reason C is not correct. Windows are part of the defined dwelling coverage and are not excluded from open peril protection under DP3. Reason D is not correct. Hail is not a listed exclusion. It is a covered peril under the open perils coverage of the DP3 form. Question 8. Which valuation method does a scheduled personal articles inland marine policy use to settle a covered total loss of a scheduled item? A. Actual cash value at the time of loss. B. Agreed value specified in the policy schedule. C. Replacement cost minus depreciation at the time of loss. D. Fair market value at the time the policy was issued. The correct answer is B. A scheduled personal articles inland marine policy settles a total loss at the specific agreed value listed for each item in the schedule, regardless of actual cash or replacement cost. Reason A is not correct. Actual cash value is not used for scheduled articles because depreciation is waived under the agreed value provision. Reason C is not correct. Replacement cost minus depreciation applies to unscheduled coverages, but not to scheduled articles under an agreed value agreement. Reason D is not correct. Fair market value at policy inception is irrelevant, since payment is based on the scheduled agreed amount at the time of scheduling. Question 9. What is the primary purpose of a personal effects floater? A. Provide scheduled coverage for high-value jewelry while at home. B. Cover unscheduled personal property when the insured is traveling. C. Insure liability arising from personal acts away from the insured's premises. D. Extend business property coverage for items in transit. The correct answer is B. A personal effects floater provides open peril coverage for unscheduled personal property of the insured or family members while traveling away from home, protecting belongings worldwide. Reason A is not correct. High-value jewelry at home is scheduled under a personal articles floater, not a personal effects floater. Reason C is not correct. Liability coverage is not provided under a personal effects floater, which insures property only. Reason D is not correct. Business property in transit is covered by inland marine business floater forms, not a personal effects floater. Question 10. A homeowner purchases NFIP emergency program building coverage only. A flood causes $42,000 in building damage. Under the emergency program, how much will NFIP pay for building damage? A. $35,000. B. $42,000. C. $100,000. D. $250,000. The correct answer is A. The NFIP emergency program limits building coverage to a maximum of $35,000, so any damage above that amount is not reimbursed. Reason B is not correct. The emergency program does not cover the full amount of damage when it exceeds its maximum building limit. Reason C is not correct. A $100,000 building limit applies to the regular NFIP program, not the emergency program. Reason D is not correct. A $250,000 building limit is associated with higher-tier NFIP policies, not emergency coverage. Question 11. Which of the following best describes a combined single limit in an auto liability policy? A. Separate limits per person for bodily injury and a separate limit per accident for bodily injury. B. A single maximum limit that applies to all covered bodily injury and property damage per accident. C. A single limit that applies only to property damage losses per accident. D. An aggregate limit for bodily injury per insured for the policy term. The correct answer is B. A combined single limit provides one shared maximum amount that the insurer will pay for all covered bodily injury and property damage claims arising from a single accident. Reason A is not correct. This describes split limits for bodily injury, not a combined single limit. Reason C is not correct. Combined single limit covers both bodily injury and property damage, not property damage only. Reason D is not correct. An aggregate per term limit is different. Combined single limit applies per accident. Question 12. Under a personal auto policy's liability section, which of the following is included as a supplementary payment? A. Premium for extended reporting period. B. Collision damage deductible paid by the insured. C. Cost of bail bonds up to a specified amount. D. First-party medical expense benefit. The correct answer is C. Supplementary payments under liability coverage include items such as bail bond costs up to a set limit, post-judgment interest, and loss of earnings, which are paid in addition to the liability limit. Reason A is not correct. Extended reporting period premiums pertain to claims-made policies, not supplementary payments under liability. Reason B is not correct. Collision deductibles are part of physical damage coverage, not liability supplementary payments. Reason D is not correct. First-party medical payments are part of medical payments coverage, not supplementary liability payments. Question 13. Under the out-of-state coverage extension in a personal auto policy, if an insured vehicle is operated in a state with higher compulsory liability limits than those in the policy, which applies? A. The insured must purchase a separate endorsement to meet the higher limits. B. The policy automatically provides the higher state-required liability limits. C. Only the original policy limits apply and differences are unpaid. D. Coverage is suspended until limits are formally increased. The correct answer is B. The out-of-state extension automatically increases the policy limits to satisfy any higher financial responsibility requirements of another state in which the insured vehicle is being used. Reason A is not correct. No endorsement is needed. The extension already adjusts limits to state requirements. Reason C is not correct. The extension ensures the higher limit, not leave gaps in coverage. Reason D is not correct. Coverage is not suspended. It is extended to meet the higher limits automatically. Question 14. Mike Johnson's personal auto policy lists Mike and his wife as named insureds. Their 21-year-old son, who lives at home, borrows a neighbor's car and collides with another vehicle. Under the policy's liability coverage, is the son considered an insured while driving the neighbor's auto? A. Yes, resident relatives are insured when occupying any motor vehicle. B. Yes, permissive users have coverage under the liability section regardless of vehicle ownership. C. No, liability coverage applies only to autos described on the policy declarations page. D. No, coverage does not extend to non-owned vehicles under any circumstance. The correct answer is C. Liability coverage in a personal auto policy extends only to autos listed on the declarations page, or newly acquired autos, and to permissive users or resident relatives only when occupying those covered autos. Reason A is not correct. Resident relatives are insured only when occupying autos described on the policy, not any motor vehicle. Reason B is not correct. Permissive user status applies only to covered autos. Non-owned vehicles not listed are excluded. Reason D is not correct. Permissive use and resident relative coverage can extend to covered autos, so it is not true that liability never extends to non-owned vehicles. Question 15. Sarah Thompson's personal auto policy names Sarah and her husband as insureds. 2 months ago, a 17-year-old foster child was placed in their home. The foster child borrows Sarah's covered SUV and collides with another vehicle. Under the policy's liability coverage, is the foster child considered an insured? A. Yes, foster children placed in the household are treated as resident family members and are insured. B. Yes, but only after the foster placement is converted to a formal adoption. C. No, foster children are not included unless biologically related. D. No, liability coverage includes only the named insureds and permissive users. The correct answer is A. A foster child placed in the household qualifies as a family member under the liability section and is therefore insured when driving a covered auto. Reason B is not correct. Formal adoption is not required. Foster placement alone satisfies the family member definition. Reason C is not correct. Family member extends to foster and adopted children, not just biological relatives. Reason D is not correct. Foster children fall under resident family member coverage, not solely permissive user status. Question 16. Which of the following losses is most likely covered under other than collision coverage rather than collision coverage? A. Damage to the insured vehicle caused by hail. B. Damage to the insured vehicle when it overturns on a curve. C. Damage to the insured vehicle when colliding with a guardrail. D. Damage to the insured vehicle resulting from mechanical breakdown. The correct answer is A. The correct answer covers hail damage, which is classified under other than collision coverage, whereas overturn and colliding with a guardrail are collision perils, and mechanical breakdown is excluded. Reason B is not correct. Overturn losses are classified as collision because they involve upset or overturn perils. Reason C is not correct. Losses from impact with a guardrail are classified under collision coverage. Reason D is not correct. Mechanical breakdown is excluded from both collision and other than collision coverages. Question 17. Under a standard ISO personal auto policy, how many hours after a covered theft loss must the insured wait before transportation expense coverage begins? A. 12 hours. B. 72 hours. C. 48 hours. D. 24 hours. The correct answer is D. Transportation expense coverage under the standard PAPA begins 24 hours after a covered theft loss, providing reimbursement for transportation expenses incurred until the vehicle is returned. Reason A is not correct. A 12-hour waiting period is not provided in the standard ISO policy. Reason B is not correct. A 72-hour waiting period exceeds the standard ISOPAP's provisions for theft. Reason C is not correct. A 48-hour waiting period applies to certain collision losses in some policies, not to theft under the ISOPAP. Question 18. Maria's auto policy includes a custom equipment endorsement that schedules her aftermarket wheels with a $3,000 limit and has a $500 deductible. After a covered collision, the actual cash value of the wheels is determined to be $2,900. How much will the insurer pay for the wheels? A. $2,900. B. $3,000. C. $2,400. D. $2,500. The correct answer is C. The insurer pays the lesser of the scheduled limit, $3,000, or the actual cash value, $2,900, then subtracts the $500 deductible, yielding $2,400. Reason A is not correct. This ignores the deductible. The insurer does not pay the full actual cash value without subtracting the deductible. Reason B is not correct. This applies the scheduled limit but fails to account for the lower actual cash value and the deductible. Reason D is not correct. This subtracts the deductible from the scheduled limit rather than from the lesser actual cash value. Question 19. Which of the following defines the minimum limits requirement for underlying liability coverages in order to secure an umbrella insurance policy? A. A clause requiring the insured to maintain separate self-insured retention for each underlying policy. B. A stipulation that underlying liability policies must maintain liability limits at or above the umbrella policy's attachment point specified in the declarations. C. A condition that the umbrella insurer will only offer coverage if the underlying policies are written on an occurrence basis. D. A waiver allowing the umbrella insurer to pay claims irrespective of underlying coverage limits. The correct answer is B. The requirement ensures that all underlying liability policies carry limits at or above the umbrella policy's attachment point, as specified in its declarations, so the primary policies absorb losses up to that amount before the umbrella responds. Reason A is not correct. A self-insured retention requirement differs from an underlying limits requirement and is not a prerequisite for issuing umbrella coverage. Reason C is not correct. Occurrence basis underwriting is unrelated to minimum limit requirements for underlying policies. Reason D is not correct. A waiver of underlying limits would negate the purpose of an umbrella policy's excess layer. Question 20. In an excess liability policy, the self-insured retention provision obligates the insured to A. Exhibit proof of financial responsibility to the satisfaction of regulators. B. Pay the premium for any claim that exceeds the primary policy limits. C. Bear the initial portion of each covered loss, up to a specified amount, before the excess coverage applies. D. Maintain underlying limits equal to or above the attachment point. The correct answer is C. A self-insured retention requires the insured to fund or pay losses up to the retention limit before the excess liability insurer becomes liable for any remaining covered loss. Reason A is not correct. Proof of financial responsibility relates to regulatory compliance, not self-insured retention under the policy. Reason B is not correct. Premium payments are determined at policy inception and are not part of the self-insured retention mechanism. Reason D is not correct. Maintaining underlying limits is an underlying requirement, not the function of a self-insured retention. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.